Some breaking news to bring you now. We have just had this statement from the IDF about the investigation into the killing of 7 aid workers in Gaza in an Israeli airstrike. The statement says that the investigation's findings indicate that the incident should not have occurred. Those who approved the strike, this statement says, were convinced that they were targeting armed Hamas operatives and not the employees of WCK, which is World Central Kitchen, the aid agency. They go on to say that the strike on the aid vehicles is a grave mistake stemming from a serious failure due to a mistaken identification, errors in decision-making, and an attack contrary to the standard operating procedures. They go on to say that after being presented with and considering the investigation's findings, the IDF Chief of General Staff decided that the following command measures will be taken. The Brigade Fire Support Commander, an officer with the rank of Major, will be dismissed from his position. The Brigade Chief of Staff, an officer with the rank of Colonel in Reserve, will be dismissed from his position. Additionally, the Brigade Commander and the 162nd Division Commander will be formally reprimanded. The IDF Chief of Staff decided to formally reprimand the Commander of the Southern Command for his overall responsibility for the incident. They go on to say that the IDF emphasises its commitment to fighting against Hamas terrorist organisation while upholding the values of the IDF, the laws of war, and avoiding harming civilians. The final sentence says the IDF will learn the lessons of the incident and will incorporate them into the IDF's ongoing operations. Let's go to our Middle East Bureau Chief, Joe Floto. Joe, we have just had this statement in, as I was saying, but from first reading, this is extremely significant, particularly the lessons learnt. That line really stands out to me. The IDF will learn the lessons of this incident. What do you make of it?
Well, look, the RDF took a group of journalists last night, very late last night, to the Ministry of Defence to give them a briefing which was embargoed, which was we weren't allowed to publish until now, to explain the context in which this happened. And it's fair to say that the soldiers at that briefing were mortified. They'd recruited a retired Major General to have a look at the facts. And what comes across is, as you've pointed out already, a series of catastrophic errors. I think one of the biggest ones was that they failed to disseminate properly throughout the area of operation that there was an aid convoy process happening that evening. There had already been one convoy that had run earlier in the evening, and they had failed to notify everyone who was fighting in that area that this was continuing. So in that context, they say their soldiers were on the lookout for Hamas gunmen and had seen some of them approach the aid convoy earlier in the evening. They showed us some video of a gunman climbing on one of the aid trucks, a big lorry, and shooting in the air. Not clear what they were shooting at, whether it was a warning shot. They then described how, after depositing that truck full of aid that had been delivered to the coast, a number of vehicles separated in different directions. One vehicle headed north, and that was positively identified, and they showed us video of gunmen exiting that vehicle. In the meantime, 3 vehicles belonging to World Central Kitchen were driving back down to the southern end of the strip. And at that point, we're told that their drone team identified a person entering one of those vehicles carrying a gun. Turns out that was a mistake. Turned out it was a bag. And the IDF pointed out that one of the catastrophic mistakes was for that team to seek authorization to fire based on what turned out to be very flimsy evidence. They weren't sure, and they shouldn't have asked for authorization to fire. The other shocking thing, I think, was the detail last night of how the individuals inside those vehicles survived the initial strike. So in the space of 6 minutes, the Israeli military fired 3 missiles at each car, but they're in sequence. So they hit one car where they suspected there was a gunman. It wasn't. They'd made a catastrophic mistake. 2 people are seen leaving that vehicle, apparently, we haven't been shown that footage, entering a second vehicle that was part of the convoy. 2 minutes later, that vehicle is struck from the air, and there are survivors from that second airstrike who enter the third vehicle in that convoy and try to make their way away from the scene. 2 minutes later, they are struck again by a missile, and at that point, well, we know the result. 7 people ended up losing their lives.
And we've heard from the families of those victims. We heard from them, the family of Jacob Flickinger earlier. There has been speculation that they were targeted directly, but that in this statement they are absolutely conflicting that, and they are saying that this is a mistake.
So look, one of the things that is clear from the brief amount of video that we were shown last night is that at night, with the cameras that they have on their drones, the large, colourful World Central Kitchen stickers are not visible, at least on the video that we were shown. And the Israeli military wanted to stress that at no point did their soldiers believe that this was an aid convoy. They thought that they were gunmen. However, there are very simple remedies to be able to identify vehicles at night from drones. All military vehicles have got special reflective tape that could have been used, but most importantly, there was no way to contact the team on the ground. So the Israeli military said that once they'd spotted a gunman earlier in the evening, they made an attempt to contact World Central Kitchen, contacted their coordination centre, which I understand is in Washington. They were unable to reach their people on the ground. Now, we're told by aid agencies that this is a frequent event. The phone system is obviously deeply dysfunctional. Satellite phones don't work very well. And we're told by the aid agencies that the IDF themselves prohibit the use of radios. So it was impossible to contact them. But the bigger context is that this was an aid operation that was effectively sponsored by the IDF. These shipments from Cyprus directly to northern Gaza have been something carried out under the auspices of the IDF. They were providing security that evening. And not to have told everyone involved in operations in that evening that there were civilians in the area appears to be one of the most serious failings in this whole affair, which is why the commander of Southern Command, so that's one of the most senior jobs in the IDF, has been formally reprimanded by the Chief of Staff.
In the statement, they also say, we express our deep sorrow for the loss and send our condolences to the families and the WCK organisation. They say, we consider the vital humanitarian activity of international aid organisations to be of utmost importance. We'll continue to work to coordinate and assist their activities while ensuring their safety and safeguarding their lives. I mean, we know that those, it looks like those crossings will at some point be opened. But do you think this could therefore have an impact on those aid organisations? Because, you know, if they know that this could happen, that this is a mistake, will they put their staff at potential risk?
So look, the Ministry of Defence here say they're already taking steps to improve the coordination of aid and to make it safer. You've just pointed out that as a result of this incident and what we understand was quite a difficult conversation with the American president, the Israeli Prime Minister has announced the opening of further aid crossings and, critically, the use of Ashdod port, which is just 45-minute drive away from northern Gaza, to deliver aid into the war zone. Now, there are going to be questions about safety and security. I think there are also questions about the level of evidence, the threshold above which the IDF considers it appropriate to use lethal force when they only suspect that someone might be a gunman. So plenty of people will look at this incident and conclude that this scrutiny has happened only because 6 international passport holders were ultimately killed. But lots of people will wonder whether that laxity, that speed, possibly you would justify it as recklessness in applying lethal force when it's not clear that a gunman was in the vehicle as something that's been applied in the last 6 months countless times, possibly. There is a great deal of suspicion that the use of force is applied recklessly, and this will do nothing to assuage people's suspicion of that.
We also have a map, Joe. I should point out that the map you're about to see, it has been given us by the IDF. And that, Joe, kind of takes us through what happened. Can you just reiterate what they are saying happened in this situation?
Yeah. So it's a complex story, but let's go through it. So in the top right of that picture, you'll see the improvised jetty that has been built over the last few weeks to take aid to northern Gaza. And it is there that a ship with about 300 tons worth of food aid has come from Cyprus and docked in northern Gaza. IDF were providing security for that area, and they were unloading that ship that evening. So a previous convoy had already departed earlier in the evening without any event at all. At about 10 o'clock that night, they offload a further 100 tons onto a truck, onto a big lorry, and that heads down the coast to a point on that map, I don't know if it's still up, called the WCK Welcome Centre. That's where they're met by the escort of these aid workers who subsequently lose their lives. And that's where the IDF say that a gunman boards the aid lorry and fires shots in the air. We don't know if that was locally agreed security or whether it was a genuine attempt by Hamas to hijack an aid convoy. We don't know at this stage. The people who do are now dead. But that truck with its escort goes down the coast, then turns left inland to a warehouse and is deposited in that warehouse. And at that point, the convoy splits. One car goes north, which the IDF say, and they've shown us video, contain 4 gunmen. And then 3 cars, which we now know contain 7 members of the World Central Kitchen staff, heads back to the coastal road, which is the road that takes them away from where the fighting is in central Gaza, and they're heading home. And it's at that point, when they leave that warehouse, that we're told that the drone crew appears to see a gunman enter one of those vehicles, with no evidence of that, and we weren't shown any video of that point in the decision making, but it's clear that they mistook a bag for a gun, and on the basis of mistaking a bag for a gun, they sought authorization for a missile to be struck at that first vehicle.